Over the past decade, regrettably, Congress has too often abdicated its constitutional responsibility on authorizing the sustained use of military force. It is, as my colleagues have said, important to reassert the legislative branch's role, regardless of which party occupies the White House.
Today's vote is not a vote for or against the current president. Today's vote is for or against the Constitution. Either you believe that war requires the permission of Congress or you don't.
That's two Republican senators yesterday supporting the Senate moving on to debate a bill that would limit President Trump's ability to launch military operations against Iran without congressional approval. Joining us now, member of the Armed Services and Foreign Relations Committees and author of the War Powers Resolution, Democratic Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia. Senator, good morning. It's good to see you. The president has taken notice of your resolution here. He says it must be voted down. This is not a time to show weakness to Iran and to our allies around the world. He's got some Republicans in the body in which you serve who agree with him on that and say they will not vote to support this. What is your case for the War Powers Resolution and why you think we ought to have it?
I don't think America shows weakness by standing up for the rule of law. There is a way we're supposed to declare war, and it's supposed to be for Congress to do it. And following that process so that we deliberate carefully and only send our troops into harm's way following deliberation and a vote, it doesn't show weakness, it shows strength. It shows strength of a political consensus behind a mission, and it shows nations in the world that we respect the rule of law. I don't think that's weakness, that's strength, and that's why I had 8 Republicans join the Democrats yesterday to move this bill forward, and we're going to have the amendments and final vote on it today.
Senator Cornyn, Republican of Texas, said this, Senator, I think the overwhelming majority of Republicans will vote against it for unnecessarily tying the hands of the president. What's your response to that?
The bill makes very clear that we shouldn't be at war with Iran unless Congress does a specific authorization for that war. But we also state plainly the president always has the ability to defend the United States against attack or imminent attack without seeking anybody's permission. We don't tie the president's hands. The nation is stronger in war when a war has the judgment of the entire Congress supporting that mission as the framers of the Constitution intended.
So, Senator Kaine, do you have the votes?
I've got them right now, Mike. I've got them right now. It needs 51 votes. It's a privileged motion under the War Powers Act, which means it can pass with a simple majority. As of right now, we would have about 55 votes. This morning, we are going to have about 5 votes on some amendments, a couple of which are sort of poison pill type amendments that would be very difficult if they passed because they would really weaken the bill. So we have to get through the amendment process. But if we do that, when we vote on final passage this afternoon, I predict that we will pass it by a comfortable margin.
So, Senator, in view of what Senator Cornyn's comments that Willie just read, for people who are not fully aware of the history of this particular legislation, the last time it was enacted, shortly after September 11, 2001, could you please put it in context from then to today, what has happened with this and why this legislation is necessary in your view?
Absolutely. Well, in the aftermath of 9/11, clearly the American public and Congress said we have to go after those responsible. And so Congress acted with President Bush to pass a fairly open-ended war authorization to go against the perpetrators of those attacks. Nobody who voted for that at the time, Mike, believed that 19 years later we would still be fighting, losing lives, spending billions and billions of dollars a year. And that was because the authorization had no time limit, no real precise definition of who the enemy was, no geographic limitation. I know you guys know this. 2 brave sergeants from America's Southwest, Sergeants Gutierrez and Rodriguez, were killed in an insider attack last week in Afghanistan. One of the 2 had already deployed, get this, 10 times before his 11th deployment when he was killed. We should not be in perpetual autopilot war. Congress has to reassert itself. And so when we saw the president and Iran, the U.S. and Iran going back and forth in December and January and trading battlefield casualties, 1 here, 25 there, 100 service members now complaining of concussions, possibly brain injuries, we said, look, we've got to reassert that Congress needs to make this decision. No president of either party, no matter how right they are, should be making a decision like this on their own.
Senator Kaine, to follow up a little bit on what you were talking about with the tensions with Iran, after General Soleimani was killed, Senator Mike Lee said something that just really stuck with me, that the administration gave one of the worst briefings that he's ever received in his time in the Senate. How has the transparency been in the aftermath of that particular briefing as tensions continue to rise with Iran? Do you feel that the administration has been more transparent?
Well, that briefing was very troubling, and I was sitting across the briefing room from Mike Lee and could tell just from the look on his face that he was sort of outraged by, frankly, the attitude of the administration, like Congress, hey, you guys are kind of a unnecessary appendage, you know, we'll throw you a scrap that you've already read in the newspapers and you should be satisfied we came to give you that. It was insulting because Congress is the body that is supposed to make the determination about whether we go to war or not. So that's what made everybody so mad, and I frankly think that that briefing probably helped me get some Republican votes for this proposition. Now, I will say one positive thing is that there does seem to have been a little bit of a step back from escalation from early January to now, both in the United States and on the Iranian side. But remember, we were seconds away from a strike against Iran in June that the president aborted at the last minute. There was de-escalation then, and then by December and January, both Iran and the United States were inflicting battlefield casualties, one against the other. So just because there's a somewhat of a step back, we can't take our eye off this issue because both sides are just poised too close to conflict, and Congress has to say that we're the decision maker about whether the nation's at war.
Senator Tim Kaine, thank you very much for being on the show this morning.
Absolutely, Mika.
And still ahead, what it looks like when the president tries to turn the U.S. justice system into his own personal practice. Plus, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo joins us as he prepares to meet with the president later today amid several ongoing fights. And as we...
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.